Om Sadhavatu Sahanau Bhunatu Sahaviryam Karavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astuma Videshavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Good. So what's the meaning of that? May we all have strength. May we all be vigorous. May we all be attentive to our studies. May we all be nourished together, beginning of it. May we not have any discord amongst us. And may we all have that knowledge that comes to all with certain systematic effort. Om Shanti, 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 3 times. Why? Well, because we have to make sure that our immediate environment is peaceful, number 1. Peace can be disturbed by who? Us. If you eat a ton of ice cream, your tummy will be disturbed. Then secondly, other people can disturb us, second time. Then thirdly, what insurance agents call act of God, the unexpected. So that's why we repeat Shanti 3 times. So we pick up 38, we need to understand what is the background. Up until now, there's been a persuasive argument from Sri Krishna to Arjuna. Arjuna means all of us, that we should actively engage in our duty. That we should do that in a profoundly a position of profound strength, a position of resolve, sankalpa. And we know that. We know that whatever we have to do, if we have to do it successfully in your studies or whatever field you find yourself in, there has to be resolve. Without that resolve, nothing happens. You have to have a strong desire for something, a yearning. So therefore, in the ancient text, the qualification for a student is found there in the Upanishads already. Samad Dhamma. Already, self-control must be there. Control of the senses, control of the mind. All of these must be there. The whole difficulty is the mind. But what's accepted by every single philosophy is this geography of the mind. What is the mind? Is there any difference between mind and matter? Matter and mind is the same thing. It's all waves. There are material waves, there are emotional waves, intellectual waves, waves of different kinds. It's because of these waves we won't understand the absolute truth. This whole existence is infinite. We catch a little bit of finite. Consciousness steers itself within a small framework of time and space. We operate in that. That's all we know. It's just the crest of the wave. The vast ocean is beyond us, deeper, and is within us, is what the Upanishads declare. So up to now, all of that teaching has been told. But it doesn't tell us how can we make sure these waves are stable. In brief, it's very easy to tell. This misunderstanding of who I am is the key. So when a small child asks, is there an afterlife? They're asking it from the position, I am this. After 2 years of age, an ego developed that said, I am. It's very important. It's very useful. It gives a sense of independence. Sir Julian Huxley discussed this, scientist, biologist, discussed this question. And he said, maybe this small ego is nature's way of temporarily deluding us in order for us to strive forward and expand ourselves. So that's an interesting proposition. So we start off with these small gateways, like being in a room and having a door and not knowing how to get out. If we know how to get out, the question doesn't arise. What will happen in afterlife? After door, what is there? Post door, what is there? We're not trapped. We just have to know the technique, open the door, step outside. When we are familiar with the territory outside, we can step inside. The great 19th century mystic described it like this. If you're visiting a city for the first time, what will you do with all the beautiful entertaining events around and so on, streets full of shops and so on. Don't go shopping. Settle yourself in your hotel first. Put your baggage there, and with that freedom, go about. That's a very interesting phraseology. You didn't know at that time. That's the phraseology of modern psychology, baggage. We carry all the psychological baggage with us. So put your baggage in your hotel room, make sure it's nice and steady and stable. With that stability of understanding, you then have the freedom to engage in the world. So people get frightened. Oh, what is the central goal? It seems like we dissolve into this infinite. Then what will become of me, my children, my friends, my family? Is there no post-mortem heaven where we all meet up and have a tea party? No, not necessarily like that. But if you want it, it's there. If that's what you want, that's fine. But you will have fallen short of your goal. And at least acknowledge that. Acknowledge there's the goal, there's the ideal. We'll progress our own way with patience until we understand it. But dissolving is not it. We don't dissolve into nothingness. We expand into everythingness. That's the key. So all the mystics know that. They know when they learn to unlock this inner treasure, it's expansion, but we have to go deeper, deeper, deeper in our own nature. Like the woodsman in a story is saying, he goes and cuts trees, but then an inner voice says, no, go deeper. He goes deeper. There he sees a forest of sandalwood. Even still, a voice says, go deeper, go deeper. He goes further into the forest. What does he find? He finds a silver mine. Then a voice, go deeper, go deeper. He finds a gold mine. He'd go deeper, deeper. He finds unlimited treasures, jewels. So we have to continuously go deeper, go deeper. We should never be satisfied. Oh, I lead a good life. I don't do anything wrong. I never murdered anybody. I never molested anybody. I never did anything. I never robbed a bank. Well, that's fine. No, go deeper, the more. Intensify on a daily basis. Intensify your spiritual practice. Not necessarily in terms of time, but in terms of depth, a connectedness. We seem to have a disconnect with this truth of who we are. This inner self, we have that disconnect. Even though it's there, behind, displaying itself in our life. It's like if you have a light switch, you can make a connection. You have to learn to make the connection all the time. Now and then the connection will be lost. Our attention will be steered in a different direction. It's all right. Now and then we remember, let's come back and reconnect, switch the light again, make that connection. Then the light comes on. Then ultimately we no longer have to do any switching. The light is permanently on in the example. So we have to understand the mind is like a lake. So many waves are there. We can't see the bottom here. But it's this depth. This depth they call the Atman, self. Why can't we see it? All these disturbances in the mind. The problem is only the mind. So what will we do to calm this? We need a technique of making this calm. You see how a big boat can make a huge number of waves, but the surface has to be calm. And when the mind is calm, then we can make sure we can introduce any wave we like, which is useful. So it's not simply the eternal, Nitya on the one side, it's Leela on the other side, a play of waves that we can engage in, and the ego then becomes higher, it becomes expanded, instead of narrow. Like a flower is of no use if it's like this, closed. It's only useful when it's open. When it's open and generous enough to spread its fragrance to our noses, our nose being there, the air being there, the flower being there, the fragrance being there, we can catch it. So we have to learn that opening process. It's an opening process. Now, up to now, a process has been told us. Here's what you can do. You can take the world and discriminate it. understand that the only thing that's permanent is the Atman. There's nothing else that's permanent. But that knowledge is not sufficient. If you really want to do that, you go off into a cave or forest, something like that, and you make this separation. Things are mixed up. So we make a separation. It's called viveka, discrimination, discernment. We unseparate things, isolate things. What in the yoga philosophy is called kaivalya, isolation. Then we'll see that. But for most of us, it doesn't appeal to us. Why? Because we're busy in working, waking life, and we want to engage in that. That's our delight. That also then can be a means. We don't have to abandon it. That's what this is saying. And here we pick it up then, the how. For most people, how you do that. So 38 is there. And we come across some technical terms here. Sukha dukkha samakritva labha labhao jaya jayao. Sukha dukkha in pleasure, in pain. Sami the same. Having made labha labhao, gain and loss, victory and defeat, jaya jayao. So treating alike, pain and pleasure, gain and loss, victory and defeat, engage yourself in the battle of life, and you don't have to look for it. You're already in it. Thus, you will incur no sin. Very interesting statement. Papam means sin. Does that mean that all actions are sinful in the sense that they are binding? All actions produce these waves. These waves are the difficulty. The counterpart to all our actions are the mental waves going on, the intention. We have to leave it off. Does that mean we then stop acting? If all action is binding, then we shouldn't act at all. We should just sit still. Even if you sit still, some action is taking place. You'll have to eat. Somebody has to feed you. Breathing has to take place. Some action has to be there. We have to understand what is work. Work is the expenditure of energy. We can do it for a purpose. We can do it like a go-getter. We can cease doing it like a lazy person. Or we can change our attitude toward it. That's what this is suggesting. So pleasure and pain. So it's very good to be even-minded when we are involved in pleasure, some pleasurable activity. Somebody asked me, I asked somebody, I see you on the weekend, you went to a concert. Yes. How long were you there? 2 hours. Very good. What concentration school did you go to? What yoga did you practice to engage yourself for 2 hours? I don't understand the question. No. You see, something entertained the senses. Something entertained the mind. You were delighted by that. You didn't require any concentration. Similarly, if we see a delight in everything, if we see this Atman and the nature of it, not just as an intellectual concept, but as an actual reality, what will happen? As soon as we contact it, a surge of delight will occur. That's the difference. Then we say, in comparison, there's no comparison. Then you say, oh my mind, why do you dwell in this foreign place? You're like a bee that doesn't discriminate. So it can settle on a compost heap, settle on waste matter, or settle on a flower. That's the freedom we have. We have these options. So like a kindly uncle or aunt, we can say, oh my mind, you can choose for yourself. You want this, it'll give you pleasure. It won't last long. No doubt it's pleasurable. No problem with it. But it'll be followed by this dukkha. It'll be followed by pain, a painful experience. It'll be followed by an absence of it. It won't fulfill you. Why don't you settle on this beautiful flower? Religion calls that God. You have your own idea of God, Ishtadevata. You put all your devotion into that. Is one way. It's not the only way. It's the way that appeals to the vast majority of humanity. So it requires concentration. Pleasure and pain. See? Gain and loss. If I thought that these, if I thought when we started this whole process of the Bhagavad Gita, well, that's fine. There will be 20, 30 people I'll stand in front. I'll make a special platform, sit there, lecture nicely. Then when one person comes, 2 people come, will I consider that a failure? No, I can't consider that a failure. One person is as precious as 2,000 people. Even-minded, no matter what the circumstances. Oh, I expected this. It didn't come about. I didn't pass the exam. I didn't get the house I wanted. All of these things. Therefore, I'm low. That's not freedom. That's not mastery. That's being subject to all the vagaries in front of you. Oh, I smiled. Why did you smile? Somebody expected it of me. Somebody thought I was a nice person when I smiled. Therefore, I smiled. That's not freedom. I should determine when I should smile, when I shouldn't smile. That's mastery. The rest is slavery. So, treating alike pain and pleasure, let them come, gain and loss, victory and defeat. Engage yourself in this battle. Thus, you will incur no sin. In other words, it won't be a muddying kind of wave, a disturbing kind of wave. It won't create a binding effect for you. It will create a purifying effect because it will stabilize the mind. All these waves will stop being disturbed if you're equal-minded. And then when you work, what effect will that have on work? Then you know the secret and key to work. The person who works and has the greatest output, manufacturing output, is the person who's steady, the person who is not in a mental frenzy, the person who doesn't expend their energy in wasteful ways. That's where the maximum output comes. So, of course, it's the way of the world to view pleasure and pain in different ways. See, a weakling totters. It requires strength. A weakling totters carrying a load. But a person who's strong will carry the load and watch something and then move on, still carrying the load. It won't affect them. Then the next comes. The ideal of self-knowledge has been presented to you. Hearken now to the practice. Endowed with it, O Partha, you will break through the bonds of karma. Eshate vihita samke. Samke, this doesn't mean samkhya philosophy, it means jnana. Buddhi yoge timam shranu. This is buddhi yoga now. Buddhi, wisdom, the yoga of wisdom. Buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandha prahasyasi. Karma bandham, bondage. Bondage of sowing and reaping. What is this game? Sowing and reaping. Here we go on to the next stanza, chapter 4, number 40. So, neha vikramaso sti pratyavayo navidyate salpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahata bhaya. Is this there? In this, there is no loss of attempt, nor is there any adverse effect. Very reassuring. There are some activities you engage in where you have to start afresh. If you leave it off, you have to start again. But this, it says, even a small amount of effort, like building a building, even if it rains, you come back. Even if you only built the first floor or the foundation of the first floor, you can come back. You can do the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor, sixth floor. No effort is ever wasted. Not even a small amount of effort is wasted. Why? Because these waves are there in the unconscious. When you produce a noble wave, one which is even-minded, one which is steady, it doesn't go away. No waves go away. Every action reverberates down in the unconscious mind that yoga philosophy calls unconscious impressions, samskaras, samskara, unconscious impressions. The practice of even a little of this dharma protects one from great bhayat, fear. We go through life thinking, here's our difficulty, temptation and fear. Temptation on the one side, fear on the other. How will we protect the mind from it? Just a little of this practice done steadily will take away that fear. The goal of life is fearlessness, apaya. What's the way of right understanding and application? Yavasam ya mika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushaka hyanantascha buddhaya vyavivashinam. Avyashaninam is a very, very important technical term. It means irresolute. To the firm in mind, one-pointed, yabhyasa yatmika, one-pointed. Now what's the mostly condition of our mind? Normally in three varieties. It can be scattered, that's the normal condition, a jumping mind, scattered interests. Another mind will be one-pointed, ekagra. Another will be in between, sometimes one-pointed, sometimes scattered. It's only through concentration that this comes. So even though this is karma yoga, buddhi yoga, yoga of will. It's not karma yoga, it's buddhi yoga, the yoga of developing your will. Nothing can be achieved without this willpower, without this resolution. So it says very clearly, to the firm in mind, those who are one-pointed, buddhi, determination, eka, single-mindedness, emphasizes it greatly. Only with this, you see, otherwise then you become decisive. I will do this. Sankalpa. If you resolve, I'll come here. That's a resolution. I will do this. Regardless, I'll do this. I'll do this whether it's holiday. I'll do this whether it's cold. I'll do this whether it's Christmas, whether it's this. Otherwise we have become indecisive. And in that indecision, that vagary comes about. We won't get the settled mind. So we have to cultivate this. Imagine if you ask a student, so you're intending to pass your exam, when? In a month's time. Very good. What's your study program? Sometimes I study, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I like to sit and study, sometimes I like to sit and watch television. Eh? And so how many hours do you study? Sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 4 hours. The same thing with all our systematic lifestyle. Oh, I'm very tired. I see. Tell me something. When do you go to bed? Sometimes 9 o'clock, sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning. I see. And when do you eat? Sometimes 10 o'clock in the morning. You see, if I eat at the same time every day, digestive juice gets released, gastric juice releases, and saliva releases in the mouth. Because the body knows at that time we'll eat. Same thing, meditation. Where will you meditate? At that time, everything is calm. Why? That's my time for meditation. The mind automatically goes there. I don't require endless repetition of japa and make my mind calm and steady. Automatically it goes there. Same time every day, it goes there. Same time in the evening, it goes there. So this steadiness of practice is necessary to induce this one-pointedness, of intention. It's not spiritual practice. It's steady spiritual practice that is required. What happens to those who are indecisive? Many branching, it says. Bahu, shakha, many branching, and endless are the decisions of the irresolute, who are infirm in mind. Those who are strong in mind, they don't get it, they're decisive. Those who are irresolute, indecisive, There's a question to people to put in business. Are you indecisive or not sure? So it requires this firmness of mind, decisiveness. See, in whatever direction a ship is sailing, the master of the ship always knows what the direction is because it's a compass. You keep your compass, keep your mental compass there. Now, we can introduce the concept of God if you like. It was like a child. Did you ever hold a pole and swing on it? Did you ever do that? Yeah? Hold a pole and swing around on it. Yeah. We have to do that. Keeping the mind firmly fixed on God, we can swing wherever we like, enjoy life. See? So keeping the mind fixed on God. You know the story of Dhruva? Yeah? See, Dhruva was a prince, and the king had 2 wives. And anyway, there was one wife had a child, Ugrasena. There was Dhruva, and anyway, he went to go on to his father's lap. But his father was in love with the queen who had his brother, a different child. So to please the queen, see, he didn't have much strength, he brushed the child off. And the child, very unhappy, went to his mother. This is what happened. And then the other queen said, no. She was very pleased. The king is favoring my own son. So what will you do? If you want to be the king and succeed in this kingdom, because you're the oldest, then you can do it. But you'll have to get tremendous self-control. You'll have to go and sit in the forest. You'll have to meditate. You'll have to assert this great power of concentration and focus of mind. So he took it seriously. At the age of 5, he was only 5, he took up his things and went off. Even in a short period of time, he got tremendous self-control. His teacher was Narada. Narada, the wandering saint, who comes, if you're in distress, he'll see it. He also has a mischievous side, but he taught him. He became very strong in concentration. Then his father felt grieved. My son has left. What a thing I did. This wasn't very noble of me. His son eventually came back, and he was delighted. Then his father grew old, decided himself to retire to the forest, and discovered this Atman for himself. And Dhruva took charge of it. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, the long and the short of it was, he got a wish. His first wish was, I want to rule the kingdom. That was replaced. No, I wish to know the immortal infinite. He was granted a boon so that everybody would see what concentration means. He was granted that once he passed away. See, in other words, once the physical body went off, he would be fixed as the North Pole star, which even today is called Dhruva. So it doesn't matter where you are in navigation on the seas, wherever you go, if you look for that pole star, you'll always know that's north. Our mind has to be the same thing. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravatya pravadantya vipashita. This is a very significant passage. It says, Veda vadarataha partha nanyad astiti vadinaha. There are many religions throughout the world who assert we are correct and we are right on the basis of my scripture. My scripture is everything. But you see, you can't get God from a book. So the 19th century mystic once told this. He said, if you bring the almanac that forecasts all the rainfall, and squeeze it as hard as you can, not one drop of water will ever come out. You can't squeeze God from a Bible. You can't squeeze God from the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita or any scripture. It's just second-hand information. First-hand information comes from religion as realization. What is religion? Realization. You have to realize the truth. Anything else is all very secondary. This is the only place where you'll find this described, that in all the subjects of knowledge, categorized as Paravidya and Aparavidya. Aparavidya, the Vedas are included in it, is a lower kind of knowledge, like a step ladder. It gets you to a certain place. Thereafter, it's not required. You don't require water when there's a flood everywhere, it'll tell you shortly. So all these people, mystery mongering and debating on the surface level. So, I have a story to tell. I suppose we have to start once upon a time. Once upon a time there was a milkmaid, and there was a great Pandit scholar who used to come from the other bank, and her job was to go and fetch him by boat. She was in charge of the ferry. She did that for her father. So every morning, exactly the same time, this Pandit wanted to come from the other bank, across by the water, arrive there and do his class on the Vedas, scriptures and so on. Then one day, unfortunately, and she would wait, and he would pay her some money, and off she'd ferry him. At the end of the day, ferry him back. He was very punctual. One day, unfortunately, her father fell sick. She had to attend to him. She was late. So she went across. There's the Pandit there, jumping up and down, furious. Said, "Why are you late?" He said, "My father was very sick," and so on and so forth. "Oh, stupid girl. Don't you know just by repeating Hari's name, God's name, don't require the boat, you'll come across straight away and hurry and take me across. And then you can attend to your father. Didn't you know that?" Foolish girl. Now, she was a simple girl, so she thought, he must be right, he's a very learned man. Day and night she repeated the name of Hari, 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 and so on and so forth. Anyway, the next time she came, ready to guide him across the water without a ferry. He said, "How did you come?" She said, "I walked across. You told me if I repeated God's name as I walked, then no boat would be required. Come with me, I'll take your hand." He said, "No, I don't believe you." He says, "Yeah, no, I'll show you." Hari, 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 walked across the water. God carried her across the water. And she said, "Come, you try it. You told me, so you must know anyway." So he put his foot in the water and lifted he had a new dhoti, silk dhoti. Hari, 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 it sank. She had to rescue him. You see, that's the thing. He didn't believe what he said. He didn't know. He didn't actually have the real knowledge, the fundamental knowledge. Just heard about it somewhere. The person I know, he never left a certain country in his life before. And so, but he'll tell you, oh, if you go to New York, this and that and the other, he read a lot of encyclopedias, an encyclopedia kind of mind. But you see, he wouldn't know. If you go to New York, what the taxis feel like, who's swearing at who, what the pace of traffic is like, and so on, what the smells are like. You won't know unless you have been there. So personal experience. You have to experience God firsthand. You won't get it from a text. The unwise who delight in the flowery words, beautifully put, see? In the flowery words, the eulogizing words. Veda Vada Ratha, taking pleasure in the eulogizing words of the Vedas, say that there is nothing other than this. But you see, here's a caution. What do they want by studying the Vedas? It's also tied in with ritualism. So Krishna gives a strong condemnation of ritualism alone for its own sake. Ritualism is fine, just as an assistance, as a help. Helping what? helping concentration of mind, get the attention steered in a certain way. So in that way we can light a candle, we can light an incense stick, we can say a prayer, we can imagine, Lord, you please come in a form. You who are formless, please delight me by assuming a form so I can worship you. Is that okay? He says, yes, it's okay. He doesn't. All of that is fine. But if you do it for a motive, I light a candle. Why? My mother is sick. I want to get something. I want to get wealth. Means in brackets, I haven't got it. Actually, you won't get it. +1, -1, no gain. You have to assert, Lord, you supply everything, full abundance, it's there already. I just have to assert it once, it'll be there. I won't have to assert it 100 times. You want something? Oh yes. Make some semolina porridge, put it in front of the deity, the Holy Mother or something, light an incense stick or something like that, do that every day, and then say a particular mantra so many 100,000 times, and do it for 40 days, you'll get what you want. That's fine for the doubting people. But what about the faithful people? Once is enough. I conducted a course in Zimbabwe once. We had a drought, no rain. Anyway, the course was over 2 weekends. So anyway, the second weekend we gathered. How are you? How are you? Yes, fine, fine, fine. This is what have you been up to? In Johannesburg, she said, I went there. There was a huge gathering. 40,000 people prayed for rain. So I thought it was disgusting. Why? It's terrible, terrible. 40,000 people more, maybe 70, 80,000 people there. But what a terrible sight. Why? He says, did you know? Not one person, all praying for rain, not one person brought an umbrella. Not one person. Yeah?
You see?
Imagine.
You get it? It's like if you really believed it, because you know it's going to happen.
So, why do they perform these rituals? Desire ridden they are, kamat manaha, full of desires. Kamat manaha swarga para, janma karma pala pratam. The very technical term, pala, the fruit. So, desirous, who are desire-ridden, who hold the attainment of heaven as the goal of birth and its activities, whose words are laden with specific rights belonging to bringing in pleasure and lordship. Is there an afterlife? Oh yes. But should we seek heaven, where we'll get relatives and have a tea party and so on and so forth? That would not be the highest thing. It's just a duplicate of what we have here. Only there, you eat, you never get hungry. You see? You can eat and drink as much as you like and so on. You have to go to Weight Watchers. Nothing like that. But it's only what we have here. It won't give you fulfillment. That's the difficulty. It won't help you to discover this Atman. That's the problem. So why in the ancient days this ritual was there, but there's only the Kanda Karma portion. You have to go to the Jnana portion. You have to go to knowledge. When you get knowledge, you never have to repeat something. You know your name? Yeah. Well, you see, what's the evidence of it? It never gets depleted. It's not like milk. You have so much, then you have to, after a while, you have to purchase more milk. No, not like that. When you repeat your name, it's not because you don't repeat your name to top up the knowledge. I wrote, how many checks did you write yesterday? I wrote a dozen checks. What will you do tonight? Sit down and repeat my name at least a dozen times, top up, so I can write another dozen checks in the morning. It doesn't happen. So knowledge means I no longer have to repeat it. Knowledge means it's settled. No more effort. Desire ridden. What is the source of the desire? Is this ego, this I, aham, this datum, which is very damaging. It's closing. It's not expanding. What is spirituality? It's taking that, it's making an expansion. Taking the restriction, the limited, and making it expansive. What will be the first thing? You'll feel an expansion within yourself. What will others notice? A spirit of generosity and service will take place. You'll have an expansion of this I to encompass the whole world. not just this small individuality. So, laden with specific rights, bringing in pleasure and lordship, and this is the entire struggle in all religions. Wherever there was a Jesus, there were these priests and prophets, always this struggle, priests and prophets. How did the Upanishads develop? Because free-thinking people said, I will question this dominance that priests have, I'll challenge. I'll say, is it worthwhile? Let me find a deeper meaning to it, away from the karma, the action, the ritualism. It has no meaning. You do something, say a few things, and then make a dominance of some people or view, I won't do it. I'd rather start with a blank sheet, taking only for granted I exist, and then discover what is the depth of my being, what am I in depth, and see what happens. Drink the fruit of that. So, Bhogaishvara, by God, Bhogaishvarya is a very significant term. Bhoga and Aishvarya, that is pleasure and power. Most people do something for pleasure and power. But they're inferior, of an inferior type according to this. Then we go on. Bhogaishvarya prashaktanam taya bharitta chetasam. Of the people deeply attached, Bhogaishvarya, to pleasure and power, lordship. Of these, Vyavya sa ya nika buddhi samathauna vidijyate. See, there's no fixity of mind. Again, this technical term of determination. There's no fixity of mind for them who cling to pleasure and power, and whose discrimination is stolen away. See, the vulture soars high in the sky, but where does its eyes fixed? Its eyes are fixed on the carrion below. The corpse is below. We can soar very high, but our critical eye only looks. Our eye of criticism. Things are not perfect, things are not right. Means I have a gap in me that needs to be filled, a desire. So what's the key to yoga? This is discussed between stanzas 45 and 53. Is this key? Now we come across then some very technical terms. Terms that relate to what we call nature, prakriti, is comprised of three things. We have to understand that before we understand what this particular verse means. According to these ancient seers and the ancient yoga philosophy, the whole of life is to do with these waves, but these waves have three varieties. One is called rajas, one is called tamas, one is called sattva. The characteristic of rajas and tamas is self-centeredness, egoism. I do something for my sake, to get something for me. How will I make an antidote? I have to promote sattva. Somebody asked me at the weekend, last weekend, God is good. I said, why do you say that? Who told you God is good? What you call God is surely above good and bad, virtue and vice, dharma and dharma. We can't understand it. We think God is good. Then we get puzzled because there's a tsunami that goes and takes thousands of people. How can a good God do that? You see, these awkward questions arise. They're difficult. No, God is not necessarily good. Then if God is neither good nor bad, why should we do good? Here's the technique. These waves disturb your peace of mind. They disturb your equilibrium. They give you problems. In amongst them are temptation and fear. You can't see the bottom, your own true nature. Therefore, you have to introduce a counter wave, something that will neutralize these other two. That is called sattva, the wave of illumination, with all the key values, none of them to do with the ego. selflessness. Values such as truth, nobility, goodness, harmony. Introduce them. How often will you have to do it? As often as the mind roams and roves, as often as it catches a wave of self-centeredness. That'll be all the time. Except dreaming and dreamless sleep. Therefore, every second I have to engage in it like a game. I have to play the game of sattva. How do I do that? I have to stand back, review the mind in a poised equilibrium position and see what the waves are coming from moment to moment. Here's a second. What's in it? Anger. What's the next second? More intensive anger. What was the difficulty? I started off as a wave, anger. I saw it coming, then identified with the wave and said, I'm angry. And that swept me away. The wave swept me away. My mind swept me away. There's no freedom in that. What will I have to do? Being an observer, I can observe. Being fundamentally the Atma, not something that is not attainable. Something I am, I can move to at any moment because it's my fundamental nature. From that position, what can I do? I can see any wave come and go. Standing back. If I stand back as a practice in yoga, it's called pratyahara, withdrawing the mind from the senses by the technique of observing the mind, not changing it. Just seeing what's happening, what's going on. I'll recognize old friends from my childhood. In my childhood, I was angry. Then when a circumstance came, buffeted by a wave, not having the equilibrium, not considering alike pain and pleasure, good fortune, bad fortune, success, failure, what happened was I stood back and got buffeted. I engaged in it without any sense of discrimination. I said, I am the wave. I have no power over it. If my nature is the wave, I can never change it. If my wave is the Atman, I can change the wave. What wave came, I have to observe it. And I can allow it some freedom. So, in a moment where my mind is not necessarily occupied, what will I do? I'll watch the mind come. I'll watch the thought wave come and go in a space of time, 1 second, then another second, another second. What was filled in it? Like a blank check, never been used before. What will I observe? Anger, hate, disturbance, and so on. How many units? 4. What can I put in? I must put in at least 5. 5 at least will have an effect. You see, the samskaras will be there. And when I look to the unconscious bank account and ask Lord, what happened? They say, well, you had 4, not in your favor. 4 disturbances. I see. Then what should I do? Oh, never mind. You had 5, all positive. All truth, beauty, goodness, love, nobility, harmony. Spirit of service. I see. So what's this final score? Oh, +1. 4 minus, 5 plus. Net result, +1. Supposing I now intensify that, it's called spiritual practice, and I decide in 20 seconds, I'll allow 4 seconds negative to come. They're all childhood friends. Jealousy and hate and so on, all childhood friends. If you see in all mythological stories, what's the one fundamental difficulty? Jealousy. So you read the Ramayana. What was the queen's complaint? See, it was just jealousy. What was the maidservant? Is it actually a maidservant that came and told her, oh no, you should give this kingdom to Bharata, your son? What's the symbolism of that? That maidservant is jealousy. Jealousy came up. Everywhere you'll find it. So jealousy is something in childhood. I want this toy. That person's got it. I feel miserable. May I have it? See, the difficulty, ego, is I want this. Up to 2 years, the child didn't have it. Then, all of a sudden, I want it. In adulthood, I still say, I want it. We didn't develop from the childhood stage. Acknowledge these old friends. Here comes jealousy. Sit down, please. Have a cup of tea if you want. Haven't seen you since the age of 5. Never mind. Come if you like. Stay if you can. Go if you must. I have new friends. Who are these new friends? Never mind. Truth, beauty, goodness, love, nobility, harmony, Lord of the universe, peace. Like that. 4 seconds jealousy, 16 seconds noble, noble, joyful. Net result over 20 seconds. Ask the scorekeeper, Lord, how did that go? He said, you have 12 seconds in your favor, 12 points. 12 points for you, well done. Next 20 seconds, let's take it. In that way, we play the game of life. Then when it comes to action, we do the same thing. The art of work is a work of art. We take every action, take it deliberately, consciously, and then later it'll be told a very interesting thing, very controversial thing. Do actions without desiring their fruit. But what's the point of doing an action if there's no fruit? If there's no result, why should you do anything? Don't tell a student, you see, never mind, if you pass the exam, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. Never mind about the fruit. It's a misunderstanding of a very useful passage. The fruit is not yours. Don't cook food just for yourself. Cook for everybody and be a participant in it, is the meaning. The fruit is not yours in the first place. When you offer a flower at a shrine, the flower is not yours. God doesn't require flowers. You just do it as a service, as some love. Here are your flowers, they're not my flowers. Look at me, important person. Flowers, I made the whole prasad myself, brought it to you. Here it is. See me. Sit me on a golden throne. Tell me what a nice person I am. All of that. See, that will create now waves. It'll distance yourself from the Atman, your own true nature. It'll close things up. It'll make things self-centered. It'll create a small castle around yourself, a wall that inhibits your freedom. Any wall that you put around stops your freedom. It doesn't expand your freedom. So give up the fruits. What does that mean? Give up the attachment to my ownership, not the fruits. My attachment to the ownership of them. They're not mine. They never were. I'm just giving them back. That's all. That's the idea. Now, what if the person says, can put it the other way, oh, you tell me I have to give up all the fruits, therefore I don't see any point in acting at all, they go to laziness. And the two extremes look like the same thing, the sublime peace and laziness. You watch a person sleeping, oh, he's nice and peaceful, deep in meditation. No. They used to tell that, you see. There's a certain new fangled organization, whose name I won't mention. It became very popular in the 1960s and 70s, the technique of meditation. And here's what happens. See, when a thought comes up, you block it off, make the mind completely blank. That's called meditation. Misunderstanding of Patanjali Yoga Sutras saying, yoga, nivritti, yoga, and so on and so forth. Make sure that there are no waves. You won't make no waves by blanking waves. You'll only make dullness. You won't make any use of an engine. You won't think it's useful if you say, here's what I do, I'll preserve the engine, I'll never use it. The mind is meant to be used. How will you use it? In subtle waves. That's how we'll neutralize the waves. And stop all the waves of the mind, all the disturbances, by putting in these counter waves. The others then settle. So the whole of spiritual practice, regardless of your religious affiliation or no affiliation, is simply putting in the sattva, making everything sattva, making all actions sattva. Actions have to be accompanied by thoughts. Thoughtless actions, most people operate in a mindless zone. Now the very catchphrase, all the great psychology thinkers of today are introducing these oriental terms of mindfulness. The Buddhist term, mindfulness. Make sure you do everything with mindfulness. Make sure you do everything with a sense of goodwill. There's a story from the Buddhist tradition. There's some Buddhist monks. They went and they meditated in a forest. But the forest was inhabited by fairies. And the fairies got disturbed by these calm, peaceful men. They didn't think it was right that they should sit on the branches and so on and so forth while these people are meditating. So they decided to make some disturbance, rustling sounds, and then sometimes make apparitions, come and make a face and so on. These monks were frightened. They went off to the great Lord Buddha and told them. The Buddha said, no, you should have goodwill wherever you go. You should go back there. And I'll teach you a song. He taught them a song to sing. They rehearsed it. They went singing that song. It was so enchanting that the fairies came and even carried the monks' pots and vessels and staves and so on. And the whole thing became delightful. You see, the effect of goodwill. Never let an opportunity pass up for offering your goodwill to somebody. Daily it must be done. That's sattva. So every action is an expression of goodwill. We leave it off there for the time being, but we pick it up now from the next time we meet on this 45th stanza. The Vedas enumerate the three gunas, Triguna, Vishaya, Veda. You transcend the three gunas, Arjuna. Be free from the pairs of opposites, ever balanced, unconcerned with getting and keeping, and centered in the self. So we pick the next thing up. See, Krishna said, the benefit of the Gita you get by rapidly repeating Gita, 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 Gita. It turns out it's Tyagi, 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 which is a distortion of Tyaga, renunciation. So we pick it up at 46, actually, to the enlightened Brahmana, that is knower of Brahman. All the Vedas are as useful as a tank when there is a flood everywhere. We'll pick that up next time we meet.
Thank you.